Section 1.3, Organizing Categorical Data. Once we have a data set, we need to organize and display this data in a way that helps us to see patterns. With categorical variables, we're usually concerned with how often a particular category occurs in our sample, and then we want to compare how often it occurs for one group with another. To compare data, we have to be able to calculate percentages and other rates. A two-way table displays the results from two potentially related variables. It shows how many times each combination of categories occurs. This down here is an example of a two-way table. So we've got two potentially related variables. We've got male, female, gender here, and yes or no, and we're going to talk about what we are comparing here in just a minute. But this is an example of a two-way table. Frequency is the number of times that a value is observed in a data set. And then we also have percentage. That's the number or rate that is expressed as an amount out of 100. It's the part of a whole. So frequency and percentage are not the same thing, and we're going to discuss that further in just a second. Okay, in this particular two-way table, the variables are gender and whether or not the person has had a speeding ticket. So that is what yes and no represent here. Either yes, they have had a speeding ticket, or no, they haven't. What is the frequency of males who have had a speeding ticket? So the frequency is just the number of times that value was observed. So how many yeses were observed for males? Well, there were 8. That is the frequency of males who have had a speeding ticket. Likewise, the frequency of females who have had a speeding ticket would be 6. Okay, switching the question on us. What is the percentage of males who have had a speeding ticket? So when we want to take a percentage, we want to do a part of the whole. So for us, we have 8 males have had a speeding ticket out of how many total males were asked? Well, there were the 8 that said yes and the 15 who said no. So we have 8 out of 23. If you divide 8 divided by 23, you get 0.3478, etc. And turning that into a percentage, we need to multiply by 100 to move that decimal point over 2 places. So it looks like about 34.8%. So that's what I'm going to write here. So 34.8% of the men surveyed had had a speeding ticket. Okay, what percentage of females have had a speeding ticket? We're going to work that exactly the same way. So there were 6 who had out of the total, so 6 out of 17. If we divide 6 divided by 17, that should come out as 0.3529, etc. Multiply it by 100 to make it a percentage. Approximately 35.3%. Make sure your calculator, make sure you know how to do these calculations on your calculator, whatever type you're using. Make sure you can divide and move the decimal point accordingly. So based on this data, if you have the question, is a male or a female more likely to have a speeding ticket, what would you say? Well, in this case, we'd want to go with our percentages. This is a higher, the females have a higher percent. So I would answer here females. And what's important to note here is that it is unfair to compare the frequencies when you have different sample sizes. So it's unfair to look up here and just say males have more. There were 8 males and only 6 females. When the sample sizes were different, there were 23 males asked and only 17 females asked. So the fact that there were more yeses doesn't really tell us much. When we look at it percentage-wise, however, a higher percent of the females had speeding tickets. So when you have different sample sizes, you want to always compare those percentages just in case. What is the percentage of people who have had speeding tickets? So an overall percentage here. So those who have had speeding tickets, that would be the 8 males and the 6 females. Out of both of the totals, so out of the 23 males and 17 females who were asked. So that would be 14 total people out of the 40 that were asked. Dividing that out comes out really nice as 0.35 or 35%. If 200 people were surveyed, approximately how many of those people would have speeding tickets? When I read a question like this, the first thing I do is I try to condense it to just a shorter question. So when I read this, overall, what I'm getting is I'm being asked what percent, sorry, that's not right, what is 35% of 200? That's the question. If I were to ask 200 people, what would be 35% of that? Because 35% is the general amount of people we expect to have speeding tickets. So what? Well, that's my unknown, so that's an X. What is 35% of signals multiplication 200? So if I were to multiply 0.35 by 200, I should get an answer here that makes sense. If we do that, we get 70. And always take a second to make sure that makes sense. So if 200 people were surveyed, 70 of them could have speeding tickets, and that would be 35%. So that makes sense.